Hello, my name is Kimberly Logan. Today I get to introduce you to the concepts of perceptions. There are many ways in which people perceive each other. Many times we perceive each other in nonverbal ways as well as verbal. In the new realm of technology, there are many questions still to be answered since there are nonverbal interactions which can change the nature of our perceptions. When looking at our perceptions of different interactions, we are to be reminded that we see things through cultural lenses, which limits us in our understanding of other cultures. As we learn more about culture, we see there are many similarities as well as differences. Throughout this presentation, I will explain some of the similarities as well as differences in culture in general, as well as for a couple of specific cultures. In our understanding of perceptions, our common goal should be to recognize our limitations and learn to love those who are different, no matter their culture. If we learn to love, we can then come together in community, as God has designed us to do. So let's take a look at web-based social cognition, which is the consideration as to how people perceive each other in this ever-growing world of technology. So a question is being asked: which cues online are used to form initial impressions of others? Past research has explored how first impressions of people were based particularly in how one observes others face to face, and this is lacking in the world of technology. It is found that there are some consistencies between face-to-face and web-based impressions. In our textbook, Sabate suggests that the more limited information, such as facial cues, may actually allow us for a more impactful understanding of each other. This raises another question. Can we learn more about one another in this new life of technology? Understanding perceptual differences in cultures is also very important. Julian Borelli was on a TED Talk created in 2015. He reminds us that we all see the world through cultural glasses. The lens through which you see the world shapes your reality. If you can change the lens, not only can you change the way your brain perceives behavior, but you can also change the way people relate to cultural differences. The illustration given by Borelli reminds me that we are limited in our understanding of many things, and we cannot possibly come to understand all the differences in all the different cultures. That is not to say it would not be important to learn about those cultures that are around us to the best of our ability. However, understanding we are limited in fully understanding the differences is part of our bounded rationality. Sabate states, we can make errors, including distortions or misjudgments of others and of our social life in general, even when we are not trying to do so. We don't have any ulterior motives. This allows us to be reminded that what God states, and that is, we are limited. God calls us to trust in Him and lean not on our own understanding. We are to submit, and He will make our path straight. Do not be wise in our own eyes, and we should shun evil. We must choose to rely on the Lord for guidance, and He will give us insights. One way to shun evil, well, we could just not take offense. Even within our many differences of culture, a study by Buss in 2001 indicates that we should not treat different cultures as though they have a difference in human nature. With this in mind, Kobayashi and her associates in 2001 state that people by nature are inclined to behave in accord with their self-interest, seeking pleasure and avoiding pain. With this all being said, I will take a look at the similarities and differences between the Japanese and Americans. Sabates points out that both cultures have similarities, such as they choose to pursue close personal relationships, as well as they desire to connect with larger social circles. They both incorporate relationships in various ways as part of their self-identity. Sabates also indicates that both cultures desire to present themselves in a positive light within their cultural expectations. Even though there are many similarities between the Japanese and Americans, there are many differences as well, which Sabates points out. The Japanese sense of self is different from the Americans, which is greatly demonstrated first by realizing the Japanese culture is sociocentric, which is they are more concerned with the collective whole in nature, whereas the American culture is more ecocentric, which is more individualistic in nature. Sabates indicates that the cultural differences impact how each group perceives and is perceived. Since Japanese are more sociocentric, we can observe that their demeanor in society does not reflect as those of Americans. They have more concern with what the world around them thinks of them. The Japanese view emotional expression, trait disposition, and status characteristics differently than that of Americans. The Japanese choose not to display their emotions outwardly because of their culture. However, we as Americans tend to display higher intensities of emotions and use facial expressions to display a lot of what we feel. Our cultural lens could determine those with neutral expressions, like the Japanese, as harsh, unconcerning, or even potentially just not interested. This misconception of emotions can go both ways, as the Japanese could potentially misinterpret what we're feeling as well. In my research, I will say that I was not surprised at what I discovered. All that I have seen from the Japanese in my limited encounters here in the United States is they don't seem to display a lot of emotion. The research I was able to read allowed me to understand it's due to their culture and view their neutral expression differently. What I have learned is that we as children of God are very similar. Our desires to be included and looked upon favorably is very evident. Whether it is on Facebook or if it's face-to-face or interacting with different cultures, our main focus when interacting with others should be to display love and kindness the best way we know how and allow God to defend our intentions of being His light. I leave you with this call from God. We are to live in the fruit of the Spirit and be kind and compassionate to one another. We should forgive as God has forgiven us. For in this we will choose not to take offense, but instead give grace and seek out truth. Thank you for listening, and I pray that your day is greatly blessed.